Hello everyone and welcome to Blue Tengu's Game Development Show. I should say live this week because I'm awake again. So Blue Tengu's live game development show. Today it's going to be all about trying to test out different tutorials. I was talking with Risa in the chat right now, but not exactly sure how I want to go about this yet. I didn't have enough time to really think about it as much as I would have liked. But let's jump over to the task list. Last week we did the level flow fixes and stuff like that. I got all of that working. But in the meantime, I did actually get some overtime done. Most of this stuff is stuff I could do from a laptop, so was able to get a lot of this done, like text stuff, basically. So all of the credits, all of the artifact descriptions and lists and grouping them up and all that, all the map names, basically all the text. Got all that stuff done. Meaty tasks, but stuff I didn't have to be at home to do, which is why I was able to get it done. But from home, what I was able to do is actually handle some of the artifact menu playbacks and as well as artifact subtitle and voice timing. I was able to save a little time on this because I was using timelines to do it, which meant when the next subtitle would come up, it would have to be frame dependent. So what I was doing was basically taking the length of the audio file, adding a second, multiplying, 60 frames, and then making that the timeline thing. It worked out pretty well. It saved me a lot of time without having to go in manually and listening to it over and over again to figure out the timings of that stuff. So a lot of those meaty tasks are out of the way, which is nice. Still have quite a few normal tasks here though, but starting to get down to it. I think in terms of the final game, the big things that are really left are menu UI, because it looks really old school right now. It's just kind of placeholder menu stuff. Getting all of those tiles in the game, because right now each tile type basically only has one visual look, whereas there's supposed to be variety. I have all of the drawings, it's just converting them into stuff in Photoshop, getting them in the game. That's just going to take some time, because they do need a little brush up work as they go in. Let's see. Those are two main things. The other main thing is, of course, the player character, including the sprite and the animation. That's one other big thing. Let's see, anything else? Those are the most things. Sound effects brush up, that's going to be pretty big as well. But those are like the four kind of big things that are left before the game is actually ready for playback. Most of this other stuff is adding features, but probably tutorial is the last new thing that's going to be added. But again, not exactly sure how I want to go about this. The thing is, with the game, I've been trying to keep as much UI stuff out of it as possible so that players can just be in the world. That's kind of why we did all this stuff last week with level flow, instead of being able to freely go where you want in the world, which would require giving the player a map of some kind. I didn't want to do that, so had it where you find a monolith and it points the way out of the room and you just go one room at a time. That was the reason behind that, to kind of save on UI stuff. I hate UI, I hate UI, I hate UI. I hate making it and I hate seeing it in games when it can be avoided. So I do want to avoid as much tutorial stuff as possible, especially with tutorial stuff. I hate stopping the player and forcing them to do stuff because if the player knows what they're doing, that always gets frustrating. So I do want to avoid that as much as possible. But to be honest, the controls in this game are different. It's not like an FPS where you can just kind of expect people to know what they're doing. It does require some knowledge, which, for example, rotating the view. Also, landing is probably the most complicated thing, because you have to go down as far as you can go, get over a beach, and then click. That's actually kind of complicated. Most people are not going to pick that up without being told explicitly what to do there. So that becomes the problem. But I did break down that tutorial task into the individual things that I think I do have to tell the player. Flying, for the most part, I think the player's going to get it. They're going to jump in the game, wonder what's going on, move their mouse, and see that the player moves with the mouse. So that's probably fine. We could probably do something where it's if the player doesn't move anything on the controller or mouse for 30 seconds and they're just flying straight, then maybe give them a hint as to what to do. But I think for the most part, this one's, it doesn't need that much coverage. Rotating it's easier on the controller than on the mouse. So the mouse, you have to click the right mouse button and move left and right to kind of rotate the view. That does require a little explanation. Circling, in terms of destroying enemies by circling around them, that does require explanation. Landing is the big one that requires explanation. Boomerang also requires a little explanation because you have to hold the mouse button down and then everything in that expanding circle gets caught. So that does require a little bit. Artifacts, the fact that you have to find these things and the fact that they point the way to the monolith, they give hints as to where the monolith is, that's probably important. Taking off, the same as landing, once you get on the ground you have to be able to take off. I think that one's not going to require as much explanation because if you figured out how to land, you probably know how to take off because you're taking off in the same spot, it's going to be the beach, and you don't have to worry about altitude, you're on the ground. So that's that. Monoliths and moving to rooms is going to take a little bit of explanation because once what is your goal to find a monolith? And then when you find a monolith, it points the way out of the room and you move to the next room. That requires a little bit. And Risa, you mentioned the keyboard, but I want to avoid the keyboard completely. I do not want to use the keyboard at all in this game, which is why I haven't been using keys. Because otherwise, yeah, I could have done instead of like the controller with the twin stick, doing it with the keyboard. I think I wanted to avoid the keyboard for a couple of reasons in this game. One, it's enough to get you can do everything you need to do with the mouse, which is fine. And the advantage of that is if it does get ported to a mobile device, don't have to worry about all this extra stuff like putting junky controller things on the smartphone window or stuff like that. Being able to do everything with the mouse means it's going to be easier to port it over to touch controls and stuff. And especially with like touch, I think with the rotation and the altitude stuff, there's things that we can do with gyros and tilting as well there. Not exactly sure if I'm going to port this game to a smartphone, but just wanted to keep that kind of option open, which is why I've always avoided the keyboard in this game. With Project Spaghetti, I couldn't do that. With this game, definitely had to do that. So that's just the explanation of why I haven't been using keys. But tutorial, there's several ways to go about this. Let's do paintbrush. One way, let's make this nice and big. One way is to just do it through a menu, like old Xbox Live Arcade games and stuff. You just put in how to play thing in the menu and then just describe what you need to do in there. The problem with that is I think most players don't really care for this anymore. It does feel a little dated to do it this way. It's okay to have it as kind of like a refresher. For example, if you've put the game down and come back after a while and you want to remember how to play, or you do like knowing what you're doing before you jump in the game. So it's fine to have this as an option, but that can't be the only thing. So there's that. The other thing is the actual game window itself, how to actually do this. Because I actually didn't know until this last week when I was looking it up that GameMaker can't do like video. That was like kind of surprising. It's like, what? So I was kind of thinking, all right, just capture some gameplay and show it through, in the corner or show it like off to the side or something. But GameMaker doesn't do video. You'd have to buy an extension or something. And the problem with extensions is, yeah, if it's a free game, it's fine. But if it's a commercial game, you have to deal with licenses and all that sort of stuff. Like, for example, if you use MPEG-4, for example, they'll come after you for licensing fees and stuff. Obviously, if you get on the radar, but it is a risk. So when using video codecs and things like that, especially through extensions, I would prefer not to like get sued over like just video stuff. So I want to avoid it. If it was like GameMaker's video stuff, then obviously if they put it in there, they've covered all their legal bases. With someone who's writing an extension, all they can say is, look, you can use it, but we don't know what's going on legally, so that's just not good enough, basically. So basically there's no video that we can use. The other option is to use timelines, like for example, could have a character here, for example, wherever the player's flying, that's fine, but could have like a semi-transparent version of the player that's on the screen at the same time, and have this player like moving, based on timelines, along with maybe a little voice, like keep the atmosphere of the game as much as possible. Like for example, use the fancy voice and say you were flying around, and then have him fly, or you could turn the world or something like that, and then that's the rotation stuff. And then just can't really avoid it completely. Have like a mouse icon or something down here, that's filled in and like moving around. I think that's about the least we can get away with, because it is a control scheme that requires a little bit of thought. But I think a combination of these two should be okay. This is easy enough to figure out. Just basically need to capture some screens, put some text on it, and then boom, we're done. So that's not going to be too complicated. This is going to be a little trickier, because whether it gets in the way or not is something we have to see. So let's get to it. Let's see. Timing-wise, that's going to be kind of tricky, because line tutorial movement. Because when do you play these tutorials? Obviously, when you first jump in the game is ideal. So whether to have a tutorial stage or to just do it in when the player is starting out, and just maybe stop the enemy generation until they've gotten the basic controls down, might be the way to go. So let's see if we can turn off enemy generation first. That's kind of important. So enemy manager. If global enemy spawn is true. Actually, I kind of need that here, don't I? Because I think I've only been using that for debugging up until now. And I need to have this in both cases. So if global enemy spawn is true, then we spawn enemies. So if we turn this off when we first start the game, no enemies should show up. That should be okay. In fact, global enemy spawn true. How do we go about this? I guess we should put this in the save file, because if the player's already played the game and gone through the tutorials, then we could have that flag set to on. So let's put that in settings. Globals may already be in here. Enemy spawn, yeah, there it is. So this is per game, but okay, yeah, that's fine, per game. Enemy spawn, so we'll set this to false by default, and we need to save this. So file, system, save and load globals. Okay, well, let's just add this in here. Dsmap add, save data. Okay, that's that one. So that's save. Now we need load. So global enemy spawn. Dsmap find a value. Okay. So that should save it for us. Save and load it for us, so we can keep that setting. Now we just actually have to turn it on. But we're going to be doing that through the tutorials, so we should be okay. Just have to remember to turn it on. I love when GameMaker does that. For some reason, GameMaker really loves taking focus when doing stuff. I like just saving. Weird. So it starts off in a new game. Just to keep track of the fact that we did that. And timelines. So starting a new room, going into the first room. Is there a way to know that? Let's see. Opening. Step. There's a timeline opening. Jump to room. So maybe after this we can actually create a tutorial object. A tutorial manager? Object tutorial manager. Okay. Is this the best way to do it? Yeah, it's probably the best way to do it. The other option is to have something in Room Manager that checks a flag whether you've done the tutorial or not. That's kind of like what we did in Project Spaghetti. So if it's your second playthrough or whatever, you don't need to go through the tutorial again. In this case, I think it's mostly okay to start it from the opening. Or is it? If someone is playing this through for the second time, they probably don't want to go through the tutorial again. So let's add a quick flag here. Global's tutorial. All games. Global tutorial. And set it to true for now. Add that to save system. Kind of makes sense to have
Hollow
and Hollow Fire drops by. Hey, Hollow Fire. Allergies kicking in, I guess. How are you doing? Hope you're having a good weekend. I guess it's Saturday night for you, so you've already finished off your Saturday and you're getting ready to head into Sunday. What we're doing today is trying to think of ways to add tutorials to the game without being too in your face. Save data tutorial. Global tutorial. So we'll save this inside of system because that makes sense to have it inside of system because you could have like a menu option where you can reset the tutorial if you want to get it again. That seems fine. Whoops, that's globals. So after version is when we'll load it. Global tutorial. So if the player has already gone through the tutorial, we'll set this flag to false. So if they do start another game, it doesn't kick in again. If they do start a new game, then we should probably reset it. But if they're just continuing with a new playthrough, like a playthrough plus or whatever, then probably not worth doing it twice because it's going to get in the way. So, not keeping that in mind, if the player does select a new game, then let's set this to false there. Good for testing the tutorial too, because if I do go through the tutorial, I won't be able to get it back again without deleting my save data. So if everything works out when we go into the new room after the opening sequence, we should take me to the right directory. There we go. We should get that message that says tutorial movement. And if that shows up, then we can start on the actual tutorial itself. And yeah, I fired up GameMaker earlier this morning to avoid the whole like reconverting all of the background music stuff. Get the music about there. So we'll start the game. Yeah, so as I mentioned in the very beginning of the show, did get all of the subtitles and voices all timed and working well. I need to move the subtitles down a little bit. They're kind of like up there when they should be down there. So this is when we would want the tutorial to start, about here. Let's see if I actually get it. Doesn't look like I got the message, so I don't think the tutorial's starting properly. So right now, just making the mouse move left and right and stuff. So we can use it in the tutorial. So move left. I guess we do have to give it a start value. Yeah, do we have to give it a start value? Probably do. So we need to give it a place on inside of the view where it's going to be most of the time. Can't use mouse X because that's actually a variable inside of GameMaker. So tutorial mouse X is X view X view, and what is it? Mouse view, map view. Which one do we want to do? Yeah, again, we're gonna have problems with the rotation stuff, making graphics look funny. Let's just go with map view for now. We'll probably have to fix this later, as the mouse will start rotating and all sorts of weirdness. W view minus 200. Yeah, with the rotating views, I wish there was a better way to do this stuff with rotating views. It's always such a pain to get things in the right place. Probably have to do this every step as well. Y view, H view, Y. Okay, and we're gonna have to do this every step to keep it updated. And I guess first off we should just see where this ends up on the screen, because this could be completely off. Yeah, theoretically it should be in the lower right corner. It'll probably get weird when I start rotating it though. Move left, move right. Okay, we'll worry about the movement stuff later. Let's just get it on the screen. That's step one. Okay, there's the mouse. It's still in such a weird place though. It's like, why is it so off screen? Yeah, and of course it's gonna rotate all weird. Maybe I can use the UI layer and save myself some hassle, like I'm doing with the debug stuff here. Like even when I rotate, obviously the debug stuff doesn't rotate. Maybe draw UI is the way to go. I don't know. It is UI, so it makes sense to use draw UI. Let's just change it and see what happens. So draw UI, and if I use UI, should I be able to get away with something like this? Probably don't need to do the scaling stuff anymore. Image index. let me see actually what I'm doing for the debug stuff. Player, draw GUI. Okay, I moved it out of player at some point. UI system, debug manager. Okay. Probably right start. We'll do something like that. Get it on the right side of the screen. Display get GUI height -200. And draw sprite. We'll just do it there. Height -200. And hopefully this works. Okay, so it should draw it in the lower right of the GUI. It seems like the mouse is a little too big though. I scaled it up a little bit too much there. Let's stretch it down a bit. Okay. That's what happened. The thing was off center was the problem. At least that's one problem. Let's see what's going on with Draw GUI. Hopefully this one works, because it is a GUI overlay. It's not involved in the game whatsoever. So it actually is a good idea to put it in the Draw GUI layer instead of the Draw layer. And Torrentum got back. One of my friends is making this and has lovingly dedicated the task of research onto me for themes. Well, he knows you're the person to go to for themes and scenario work, so fair enough. That is a smart decision on your friend's behalf. You would be the person to go to. That's actually kind of cool, because a lot of times people just assume that because writing is something anyone can do, in terms of like the physical action of like typing stuff up is something anyone can do. A lot of people don't take scenario very seriously, and they don't think they need experts. So good on your friend for realizing he needs an expert. There's our mouse. Okay. And it doesn't rotate with the view, so Draw GUI was the way to go. Nice! Of course it is going to be there and in the way, so we have to turn transparency on and all that sort of stuff. But, there we go, we've got a mouse. Now we just need to actually start doing stuff with it. Tutorial mouse, let's put the transparency up a bit. I guess I could use Draw Sprite next. I'm not going to be using rotation or anything though, so let's just draw set alpha. See. Oops, my Japanese keyboard kicked in there. 7, yeah, alright, we'll go with 7. So that should be enough. Okay. Position-wise, it seemed okay. The mouse itself still feels a little bit too big. Let's go 75%, knock it down a bit. Recenter, and move left. The mouse is working, that's cool. Nice. Okay, it's a little too extreme, so we'll have to cut down on the width and all that, but it is working. And all I'm trying to do right now is implement a tutorial, and trying to keep it as out of the way as possible, so no like giant text boxes, no stopping the player and telling him what to do, none of that stuff. So we've got a little mouse icon over here that's showing you to move the mouse to move. So we'll probably make that like go in circles and stuff. Let's see, what else do we need to do? So we've got a mouse. We can turn like the left and right mouse button on and off if we need to during the tutorial. So we probably need tutorial triggers and things like that. So let's see, tutorial triggers. How are we going to go about that? should probably be inside of the tutorial object, tutorial manager. And what we want to test is whether the player is actually moving before we move on to the next tutorial. So we want to make sure that they've moved left enough, either left or right enough, or up and down enough. So, should we keep track of player coordinates inside of here? I guess we have to. There we go. Finally. Finally. Okay, so now the old mouse and the new mouse are the same value, so it's not going away until I move, hopefully. If I move a lot, yes, the player moved, and we're moving on to tutorial rotation. Good. Okay, so we've moved, now we do the rotation stuff. Okay, so now it's the rotation thing, so if I click the right mouse button in and move left and right, that should work. Yeah, I don't like that. It ruins the world having text. It's very clear what you're supposed to do, obviously, but yeah. Seeing the text makes me hate it even more. So I am completely in agreement with you, Tarentum. Can we get away with not having that text there? It does make it very clear what you're doing, but is there a way to not put the text there? Like if you just saw the mouse image like doing this, would that be enough? I think for movement it would be enough. For rotation, would it be enough? Yeah, that is a good point. Players do have imagination. They'll figure it out. With rotation, just seeing the icon with the red on the right mouse button and it moving left and right, they probably would experiment with it. Probably. Let's leave the text off for now and see how far we can get away without it, because it doesn't make me happy either. I'm not a fan of it. One thing we do need to do is not have it move with the mouse, because that's very distracting. So if we do come back to it in the future, let's at least keep it in one place. And for now, let's just not show text. Yeah, just guide them one frame at a time. I don't want to take control away from players either, because that's just as bad as showing text. I think if I do want to not take control away from players, the only way I can kind of do that is having a special tutorial room. Just with everything laid out in such a way that they're just naturally, like you said, they're going to be guided to the right path. Like having an island that only shows up after they've done like the basic movement stuff. So there we go, we got that. Right mouse button on that. Figured that out. So like right now, if I did that, obviously I can move, I can do the right mouse button rotation stuff. The next thing would be to have an enemy show up that you have to circle. The one problem is that the player is always moving forward, so it's not like another game where I can kind of just lock out controls and force the player to do the right thing. The problem is the player is obviously on a glider, so they're going to be moving forward, which means if I put an enemy in the screen, if they don't circle it and destroy it, it's going to go off the screen. Could try to just update the position based on the player and always keep it in the center. Maybe. is there a better way to get them to figure out that getting an enemy inside of this circle is the way to kill them? I guess the other thing would be to use timelines to stop their forward movement. It's artificial. It does take some of the control away from them. But to stop their forward movement, because we would have to do it on the islands for them anyway, is if they come across a beach, you have to stop them above the beach until they do the right thing. So, yeah. Stopping their forward momentum for the tutorial in spots when it's needed is probably a necessary requirement. Because if we did that, then we could easily have just an enemy show up kind of somewhere where the player's not there, show the mouse doing a circular motion, and if the player figures it out, they'll destroy the enemy and start moving forward again. Yeah, and Tarentum, we would have to make a special room for it. So it would be a tutorial room specifically designed for that purpose. That seems to be about the only way to get them to figure things out. So let's add that to the task list then. That's going to be pretty meaty. I'd say 4 hours. Tutorial room. Because it's basically slamming something into the game logic that wasn't there before, and it's going to behave a lot differently than the other rooms. We're stopping time, we're stopping forward momentum. I need something player global that stops forward momentum. I need to add that. I need to have a new room. That's going to involve graphics as well. Flying, rotating, yeah, for the most part those are done. Circling, so yeah. These are going to be the important things to do next time. Basically just the room for that purpose. And they can even find it by themselves if you don't want them to know. Yeah, it's just going to be like, if I do this, and I think I will, what it's going to be is after that opening, it's going to jump into the tutorial room, unless the player's already played the game before. It'll jump into the room. It'll start more or less like we start now. There won't be any enemies generated until they get the movement down. The next thing would be to not use an enemy manager, but to create an enemy exactly where I want it. Stop the player's forward momentum, and then show the mouse circling around. And then maybe show like a circle around the enemy to kind of show them where they're supposed to be moving. Then if they destroy the enemy, if they run into the enemy, then just recreate the enemy. Don't hurt the player. A lot of stuff. A lot of stuff. It's going to be quite a lot of time to make this. Tutorials are always a lot of time. They almost take longer than the game to make. Destroy the enemy. If they successfully circle the enemy and destroy them, then kick in forward momentum again. Next thing is to create an island above them. You would have to lock out the rotation so that they don't move away from the island. So again, it would be one of those things, you're taking control away from the player, which is never fun. You could just create a lot of islands and then just hope that they run into one. If they eventually get over a beach, then you have to stop the forward momentum. Show the right mouse button going down in altitude, like the mouse going up and then resetting and then going up and resetting and going up while the right mouse button image is showing to show that they have to go down in altitude. And then when they get above the beach, you have to show the left mouse button clicking until they land. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff there. Yeah, 1, 2, 3 gas. Good idea. Very good idea. 1, 2, 3 gas for the win. Yes, starting them on an island and forcing them to take off is actually a very good idea. Starting them on the ground, even though it is a flying game in general, starting them on the ground. The advantage to that is that the camera is not automatically moving, so you're not taking control away. And they are forced to stay on this island by default until they can learn to take off. That is 1, 2, 3 gas for the win. That is probably the best way to do it, because, like I was saying, let's get a different paintbrush open. You would have an island here, for example. If the player's starting on that island, then obviously you can still do the movement controls as we're doing them now, because those are the same, rotation and stuff. Those are all the same. The nice thing about being on an island is until they learn how to take off, they are stuck on this island. So it's natural. It's natural gameplay. It's the way it works in the game too. Until you take off, you are stuck on that island. So it's limiting. They can't just pass over it. And so they come to these beach areas on the edges. So they're probably wandering the island, wondering, yeah, what do I do? What's going on here? You can take them to the beach area. And if they get here, then you show a tutorial that says click the left mouse button. As soon as they do, they start flying. And they're like, whoa, I can take off. That plants an idea in their head that, 1, beaches are important. 2, you can take off and land from islands. They already know that by the time they're flying. So they have kind of a base for knowing what's going on. So they probably know, look, I can land on other islands, maybe. So the next time they find an island, you throw a quick tutorial out, and at least they kind of know, okay, I've passed over a beach, the mouse showed up and did stuff, so obviously beaches are important. Let me try to fly to another beach and see if I can get that tutorial back. It does give them some nice context. The other nice thing about starting them on an island is there's other things in here. Artifacts and monoliths, and boomerang. You could do all of that stuff before they take off. The only drawback is the flying thing is the central gameplay, and you're starting them learning the stuff that's not central first, but it's a good compromise because it allows us to do a lot of this other stuff. So you could have, an artificial island, but, you have an artificial island with, a relic here, a monolith here. You point them to the relic, they grab this, then they come over to the monolith. The monolith shows a beam that's going, out of this kind of fake room that we've got going here. So the next thing is they kind of follow the light. They get to here. They see like a mouse button to click. They jump into the air. And they start moving in that direction. You can teach them how to rotate and move a little bit more here as well. Give them an enemy. Give them enemies. The enemies is, we still don't have a great solution for that, but you could just, like Tarentum was saying earlier, you can just kind of hope that the player figures it out. Like if an enemy shows up, just show an icon of the mouse like circling around in the corner here. If they figure it out, they figure it out. If they don't, then they'll have to figure it out eventually or they'll die. There's the enforcement. Yeah, and Sirius also brought up a good idea, which is have a land bubble like when you hover over an island. That's actually good for the game itself as well. Just some better indication that you can land. That's probably, just in terms of UI, it's something that's useful. Some sort of landing takeoff icon. Hopefully something that doesn't look cheesy. Because if you see that icon, you know what you're supposed to do. It gives you an indication. Like you could have like arrows pointing down. Like you could have, kind of a set of arrows or something for takeoff and for landing, Fortunately, there's no upside down version of this. Alright, we'll just do it with an arrow thing. You could have something like this, animated. You know, it's very gamey, but you can find ways to get around the gaminess of it. We don't have to have arrows per se. We could do other things with it, but something that just points to where you're supposed to land and take off, and that you can land and take off would be good. Yes, 123 Gas, you did a thing. You did a very good thing. Non omnia possumus omnis. Okay, I have to know what that is. Non omnia. We can't do all things. Okay. Yeah, alright, that makes sense. Omnia is omni, like omnipresent. Possumus, possible. So not all possible things are possible. Okay. So I think that gas has given us the way out. So we still need a tutorial room, but we could just use the opening room, because right now when you start the game, you go through the opening, you take off, you're doing all that stuff. We could actually just make the player do all that rather than taking control from them. Let me show that again one more time. It would also help because I didn't like taking away control from the player for that opening sequence anyway. So what you could do is you could start the player here, show the mouse icon until they start moving around. They have to find the ring. Once they do, they have that. You can give them the boomerang hint. Then they have to wander the island. If they find a relic, then on the island a monolith is generated. Then they can go to that, touch it, the beam shows up, they probably follow the beam, being a player, a game player. They reach a beach, you give them the takeoff thing, they take off, you start flying them for a bit, and until they destroy an enemy, maybe you don't let them leave the room. Maybe that's the only condition you kind of put on it. And once that happens, you're in this room and you're free to move into the game. I think that's the way to go about it. It saves us having to make a special tutorial room too. And it makes the opening more interactive. So, there we go. There we go. We have our light at the end of the tunnel. Let me just, where can I put something like that? Tutorial room. It's not really that. Opening. Make interactive. Okay. And let me just give Gas your proper credits. 1, 2, 3, Gas, 3, 2, 1. And I have to give Tarentum and Cirrus your props too, because you all helped me with this. Yeah, because, all three of you helped me. Like Tarentum, not letting me take the easy way out kind of forced me to keep thinking about it. And Gas came up with the idea, Cirrus with the icons and everything else. The three of you definitely made this tutorial possible for me. I think this is going to work out. It's going to be natural. It's going to ensure that players know what they're doing before they jump out into the main world, but it's not going to feel like a tutorial stage. And Tarentum, by the time I finished with all those philosophy books, I could be speaking fluent Latin. That's a very good point. Philosophers like to use Latin and French. So you'll be fluent in both languages by the time you're done. But there we go. So, learning the ropes. Let's save that for next time. Do we still need a global that stops forward momentum? Maybe not, since we're not taking control away anymore. Tutorial circling, landing. So the order now is going to be taking off comes before that stuff. So that kind of comes around there. Moving to rooms is kind of the last thing. Landing, there's no way to really enforce that. Just have to kind of hope that they figure it out. So monoliths, artifacts, Boomerang. That's more or less the order we've got going for those tutorials. So thank you. Let's see. Today, we didn't get a lot done. We got a lot of thinking done. We didn't get a lot of work done, but we did get the mouse showing up and doing its thing. So we have kind of our base mouse thing that we can fiddle with and make it move around. I probably have to figure out how to do circular movement again. I always forget my geometry on that stuff. But probably make the mouse like circle and do things like that. But we've got all the icons we need. We've got all the imagery we need. Enemy spawners start off in a new game. Tutorial flying, rotating. Okay, so that's episode 42. I think we need to keep going with the tutorial next week. So episode 43 is going to be more tutorial stuff. After that, if I still have tutorial stuff to do, I might do it on my own. Might do a little bit in overtime if I can find the time to do it. See what I can get done. Maybe make the room interactive, the opening. Get that ready so you guys don't have to watch me fumble around with that too much. But that's the main bit. So that's going to be episode 43. Today we went 3 hours, had some interruptions in the morning and stuff like that, as well as getting off topic and off track and stuff. So I hope you didn't mind the 3-hour episode, but for YouTube it's going to be a lot shorter. Thank you for watching our game development show. You can catch past episodes in this one over at youtube.com Blue Tengu Studio. Usually we get more done today than we did today, so some of the other episodes might be a little more chock full of content. If you're watching this later on YouTube, come drop by the live show we do every week at Twitch TV Blue Tengu. I do this 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Sundays in Japan, which translates to Saturdays 4 to 6 Pacific, 5 to 7 Mountain, 6 to 8 Central, 7 to 9 Eastern. If you're in the UK, like Hollow Fire and Gas were, it's midnight to 2 a.m. So Saturday midnight, that Saturday to Sunday cusp there, the midnight to 2 a.m. If you're in Australia, it more or less overlaps the time I start in Japan, anywhere from 8 a.m. to noon, depending on where you live. And in New Zealand, it starts at about noon. But we do always announce what we're doing through Twitter, so follow BTengu to keep track of when the live show starts or episodes go up, or follow us on Twitch or YouTube to get announcements that way. Of course, you can see what we're up to anytime over at our site, bluetengu.com. And I think that'll do it for us. Thank you for watching. Thank you for the help again. Tarentum, Cirrus, 123 Gas. Thank you all for the help with the tutorials. I think we're on the right track now. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.